So hey
Great.
there. We're again here at saas.group AMA, and today we're talking about technical due diligence for B2B SaaS. So I'm super happy to welcome Thomas, founder and managing partner at TechMiners, a company that we often trust with our own due diligence for the companies that we buy. So thank you so much for your help. And Tobias, our own CTO and co-founder, welcome again. So let's begin maybe with a bit more in-depth introductions. Thomas, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Tobias, for having me. It's an honor. So about myself, so I'm busy in the Berlin startup scene since 2002 or three, I would say. So quite a while now. Started off as a like in different roles. Actually started off as a system engineer or system administrator for Gentoo Linux. Did some programming, team leading, then architecture, and then founded in 2008, co-founded Kaufda or Bonial, how it's called today. And we grew it quite nicely. Me as a CTO and my co-founders for, I think, 6.5 years before exiting it to Axel Springer. Fun fact, actually, 2 weeks ago, I was invited by the company for a code funeral. So they actually managed to get rid of my last bits of source code, which is a bit sad. So 15 years of life in the company, but it was nice of them to invite me. And has been hard to get rid of it. So I learned a lot during that time. And well, 5 years ago we started TechMiners to really figure out how to do proper TechDDs that really create value on all sides, and really happy to work with everyone here. And yeah, I think that should be good. I have 2 kids. I'm from Berlin. I hope the kids won't join us, but I told them not to, so let's see if that works.
That will be their
Hey.
moment of fame. Tobias?
Yeah, hi. I'm Tobias. I'm one of the founders of SaaS Group, and I think like the most technical of us. I'm in the Hamburg startup scene since I don't know 2009. I started like building really, building my own stuff, and then built and sold 2 companies. One actually to Axel Springer as well, and then bought it back and sold it to Zalando a second time, and the other one to Bertelsmann. And through that, like I also always liked this TechDD moment, and got used to it somehow, and now happy to do it from the other side, and also happy to work with such competent partners as TechMiners. I really like the approach. Yeah, like how you dig deep in the code, and many more aspects. So yeah, happy to talk about TechDDs today.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you both for joining. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's go deep right away. So what is your top one common pitfall in TechDD? Thomas?
I think it's the most I think the most common, but not necessarily the most grave pitfall is around open source, using open source components, which is of course I mean that's best practice, common practice, and always a good thing. But it's very important how to do it, and we very regularly find deficiencies in that area. But most of them can be easily fixed. But in some circumstances, it's very hard to get it into green again. I'd say this is the most common thing we have.
Okay.
And I think we're touching it in a deeper way later on, right?
Sure.
I think the most, let's say, overlooked topic that most people forget about, or most founders forget about, is actually around intellectual property, especially in engineering teams. But also, I saw that in BizDev teams. So the fact that you need to add an addendum to your contracts that all IP belongs to the company. Yeah, like everyone forgets that. It's super boring. It's super strange thing. You have to do that, but you have to do it. And I can just encourage everyone to not forget it. And it's super simple to set it up. And you just have to have it in your processes. Otherwise, whenever you sell your company or whenever you go through a funding round, you have to ask everyone who was ever involved in your source code to sign this addendum. And whenever you do that, you, as we say in Germany, you wake up sleeping dogs in many cases. So meaning that people ask, hey, why should I sign that? I'm no longer working for you, so why do you need me to sign this? And yeah, then you go through hell for a bit of a moment. And I think that's something I can just encourage everyone to do.
Okay.
Yes, a very good example for something that can be caught very early by, like, in the beginning, it doesn't hurt anyone, everyone would sign it. But later on, it's harder to get. It's like a classic thing that we also find that has actually low probability of actually a real danger happening. But if it happens, it's going to be grave. So yeah, of course, very easy to not go into that trap. And importantly, also depends on the contract type, country, and so on, where the employee sits or the freelancer sits. So it's a bit complicated by design, but easy to catch.
All right. And Thomas, when you said that was the most common pitfall, but not the most grave one, is that the most grave one?
I would say the most grave things are more obviously when they fake things, the companies fake things, and we discover it because that hurts the trust between all parties, and that's not a good foundation to keep on talking. Otherwise, it's mostly, I think, the hardest things to fix are personnel. I'd say that is not maybe didn't grow as well with the company as as it should be. And from my own experience, when we had like 6 countries, 150 people, 60 engineers or so, it was just good for me to leave the company and to pass the CTO role to someone else who has had seen growth at that level already a few times. That's just reality. But if people don't want to do this, this is something that's really harming a company, and you cannot really fix that easily. So in those cases, we are very, let's say, very careful not to touch feelings and to sink in the truth piece by piece and try to help in those circumstances. But I think that's the hardest point to solve, which is surprising because it's a TechDD, right? Most tech things, software and so on, is somehow fixable. Things where people are involved are sometimes a lot harder to fix.
All right, that's interesting. Okay, so since we're talking about AI and open source and all that, there was a question, what to keep in mind when using open source components and what benefits, disadvantages, and risks might surface during TechDD. Thomas, do you want to
Yes,
go
excellent.
on?
Yeah, sure. The benefits are, I think, obvious to most people. So if you use something that is already there and tested and proven, then you can, of course, improve your productivity. You're just faster. You don't have to figure out everything yourself, and reduce also maintenance cost because the community is kind of fixing things, and often you get higher code quality because it's been tested a lot more and done by specialists. I mean, the advantages are obvious. What's not so obvious in the beginning when you start using open source components is that even if if you don't want to continue actively developing a product, you still have the components inside and you need to maintain them and to update them. Otherwise, you might get, well, stuck in very old dependencies that are very, very hard to fix and to upgrade. It's kind of a exponential curve. The upgrading, the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. Like when you do it continuously, it's good, but it means maintenance costs. Of course, it also brings in some risks, right? I mean, the best example is probably the most known example is the log4j bug that we had in 2021, I think, where suddenly one of the most widely used open source component had a very, very grave bug, very severe bug. And it got public overnight to everyone, for everyone. So people didn't have the chance to fix it before it got public. That's just the downside and the risk. And here it's very important that you have all the dependencies kind of up to date and not too old, because then you will run into a real big problem to upgrade log4j quickly. But it depends on on another version of Java, for example, in this case. And that means that you have to upgrade all the other components, and then it's a big mess. So you have to maintain open source components, and you have to bill in the cost for that.
I think it's worth mentioning that there are like certain tools that you can just use to at least have visibility on the versions and the licenses. Also very important and not mentioned that you're using. Most companies tend to avoid GPL licenses because it's copyleft. So Google copyleft if you want to know more. And you have to actually open source your stuff. Licenses is one topic, and then monitoring on up-to-date versions of all your tools can be done with like for free tools. There are many open source and for free solutions. If you have GitHub, then there's Dependabot, for example, which you can use to monitor and also update your dependencies. And I can just encourage everyone to do that as early as possible, right? It absolutely makes sense, and try to always be, let's say, as I always say in saas group, always be DD ready. So always be prepared that someone external might be interested in knowing that as well. Thomas, I don't know, which tools do you actually use? Do you have your proprietary stack, or is there anything you can recommend?
For us, it's basically it's the same thing. Using existing components brings you a lot further already, but unfortunately there's not yet a one size fits all solution. So what we do is we kind of have a dependency pipeline, you could even say. We kind of get all the information in, turn it into this new standard SBOM software bill of material from different sources, and then in the next step we have 3 different tools that will check for the status of the versions and other dependencies that will come with the dependency. It's a very complicated field. So you have to basically combine 5-6 tools together to get a real reliable answer. And basically that's what we do. We figure that out, keep it up to date. And of course, the licenses, Tobias, thanks for mentioning that. This is open source, doesn't mean free to use for all purposes. I mean, that's one of the most common misunderstandings, right? Every open source component has a license. And if it doesn't have an explicit license, that's even more the most dangerous, because then it doesn't, well, it belongs to whoever wrote it in the beginning, and then the legal case is not clear at all, or actually it is clear, but it's very, very hard to figure it out. So it's most components actually have a license, and there you can actually check with allow lists and disallow lists depending on the product you're building. You can put that, actually configure that in the tools and have everything automated. So I'd say the best practice to keep on track here is, as Tobias said, to automate things, to of course put rules into place so that all developers know what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, and then also introduce tools. I think you mentioned Dependabot, for example, or SBOM and dependency track, or SNCC version I. There are a lot of tools that you can just integrate into your build pipeline, and that will just warn you if things happen in the commit or in an update of the dependency itself that is not in line with the rule set that you set up. And then you can sleep well, and you're always DD ready.
Right. Yeah. Thanks again for pointing out SBOM a while ago to me when I asked you. Like, very helpful. And GitHub actually has an exporter for the SBOM standard, so software bills of material, where you can basically export all your licenses and all the dependencies that you have. So all the dependencies and their licenses. That was very helpful. Thanks again. And one tool I think that, like, if anyone's interested, that I actually use a lot is a code scanner called Trivy, which is for free and open source, and it can also point out credentials in code, which is another common pitfall, right? Like that you forgot your password and checked it in. Quite dangerous. This tool can at least scan the most used tech stacks these days, and give you tips on what to avoid potentially.
Yeah. Every tool has its specialties. Trivy is, of course, also part of our pipeline, and it gives also to-dos and other code smells. It's really nice, but it's not the whole truth. You have to know what to combine. I think that's our proprietary and IP to actually know what to combine and how to run it on any kind of source code that we get.
Your best kept secret. So Anna, I see in your glasses that you're right now downloading in the mirror in your glasses. I see that you're downloading Trivy right now. So have fun with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to AI, right? Okay, so how do you evaluate AI during a TechDD process? And do you have any interesting anecdotes about that? Thomas?
AI, as everyone knows, has made a lot of advancements, and it got more usable, really, especially during the past, let's say, 18 months. Right, so like when we started TechMiners 4 or 5 years ago, it was usually the question, how did you, in what language did you implement your AI? Is it Python or just PowerPoint? So usually there was the answer, and I have to admit, in most cases it was more AI on PowerPoint than on Python. But nowadays it's more, let's say, we have to differentiate it a bit more.
I think nowadays the question is, like, is it GPT or what is it, right?
Yeah, is it GPT or yeah, exactly. But even there you can fine tune, and you can. It's always the question, what do you build around it and on top of it, or do you try to do something really yourself, very very custom models that you train, which is also still usable or needed, because you cannot, even though it looks like it, you cannot. The Hammer GPT is not for every layer. So what we found out is that most companies we can classify in how we call it, early interest, that are just playing around with it internally with any AI toolings, and then we have AI consumers, which use very efficiently sometimes the just OpenAI APIs, for example, or existing models. Yeah, so which is super powerful. I would always recommend to start there. Some companies try to skip that part and work on their own models right away. And then the third level we call AI enhancers, that are companies that take something that is already there, open sourced or fine tunable, like GPT, and they build on top of it. And then, of course, there are some the real deal companies that really train their own models and try to figure out other things. But obviously, this is super expensive, and you cannot do it half-assed. You have to go full in, and so that's only for some companies. So nowadays we.
I would actually assume that it's like, I don't know, 10% of the companies that pretend to do AI is the ones that really build AI infrastructure. Is that correct, or is it more?
I couldn't say the numbers, but it could be around that probably. But I think most companies now fall into the category of AI consumers. And I mean, there's also a trap here. A lot of AI enhancers we've seen during the past year that built, for example, on GPT-3, 3.5, that built a lot of nice tricks around enhancing or circumventing the context windows and put a lot of money into that, for example. And it was all for nothing with GPT-4. With what do they have? 32K context window, and so a lot of investment down the drain. Sometimes you just have to wait a bit, and those problems solve themselves. It's a tough field to play in because it's so fast, but that's also the fun in it, huh?
Absolutely. It was slow for a while, right? It was slow for years, and the companies that invested in infrastructure back then, yeah, I don't want to be in their skin. So,
Yeah, true.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Also
All
true.
right. So we actually have a question, which is okay. I'll throw it in anyway. This is about fundraising. This is not about selling the company, but still, what are the top important DD areas to be covered for a SaaS company going for a Series B raise? And based on your experience, what does the VC or PE look into? We were just discussing with Thomas the situation with the VCs before this. So, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe I start from a more generalist view, and Tobias, you add the SaaS sprinkle. So I think in general, the biggest areas for us are always obviously technology, right? And so all the software you have, the infrastructure, how the real assets, and then we have the team. With a good team and bad tech, you can still do a lot of things. The other way around, it's very hard. Product, because product is especially product management and best practices here and working efficiently in this field is not a discipline that especially Central Europe is very good at. We're getting there step by step, but this is, like it doesn't really matter how much firepower you have. If you don't have anyone to aim, you're not getting anywhere. And the last one usually is scalability for us in different senses. Team scalability, infrastructure scalability, product scalability, and so on. When it comes, those are the big areas where we can basically kind of classify all of the big things that we look at. When it comes to SaaS, we add another layer on top of that, because for SaaS, there are a few more things to be considered, which is how costly it is to onboard new users, how the cost evolves with more users. Is it linear, super linear, or worse, and exponential? And what about payment, subscription management? What about the invoicing and stuff like that? This is very unique for SaaS and it's key to actually grow such a company. So that's what we would look into. Tobias, what would you add?
Well, from my perspective, it's all about product market fit and product. That's like the real deal when you look at a company. This is the most important fact that the business is actually working. And honestly, like especially when we're acquiring businesses, so it's maybe a bit different from the typical VC. typical VC maybe could ignore the fact that there's no product market fit. But I've also seen like many VCs that actually went down that route and paid a very high valuation for a company that seemed to have product market fit and was like essentially run over by other VCs, and then invested very high valuation, and just to realize that there was no real product market fit and that there's so much to be done, which is really crucial and critical if you don't know it, or if you didn't know it from the start. No matter if you're VC or if you're buying. If you're buying, it's even more important. So product is key. Product market fit is absolutely essential, especially for us. Then I agree, time to value is really critical. So how quick is it to onboard new users? How directly does the product pay off, and how easy it is to see and to use for an end customer? Scalability, you mentioned, Thomas. I think sometimes it can be actually also a negative sign if a company focuses too much on generalizing and scalability topics, especially in the tech area. I once did a podcast with a former CTO of Pipedrive, and he said in his nice accent that scalability problems or scaling problems are good problems to have. I would actually agree that if you're there and you really have scaling problems, then you're successful. I like if companies have scaling problems. And then the last one is absolutely luxury problems. And then the last one, from my perspective, is really a strategy how to mitigate tech debt. It is actually a topic that we kind of touched when we touched the open source license management and dependency management. It's very, very important, and I see that with many companies, that you have your tech debt under control, that you have a strategy, percentage of time you invest to work against it, and understanding on a management level, also even CEO level, not only CTO level, that there is such a thing as tech debt, and that there is not just features and not just feature development. That's very, very important from my perspective, and I see that with many companies.
Okay, thank you.
Well said, Tobias.
Yes,
Thanks.
indeed. All right. So the next question is, what are the best practices for ensuring the security of AI-powered features, especially within a SaaS offering? So, Tobias, ready to add a bit more SaaS sprinkles?
Security of AI-powered features.
I can add my generalist
Yes,
view
please.
first, and
Yes, thanks.
But so AI security or quality in the end of AI features is really a tough challenge because it's mostly it's the nature of those features to work like a black box. You can't really see what's happening inside. So instead of having little unit tests and going through the code line by line and making sure that everything works well, you can basically only like test the input and see what the output does. And especially when it comes to LLMs, the output is just a text, right? Or an image. And it's very, very hard to say, to assert, is that what we expected or not? So I've seen approaches now, and I think we will see a lot of development here in the next months and years. But I've seen even LLMs testing LLMs, right? Where you generate input with an LLM to run against your model, and then you get the output and evaluate that with another LLM again to see if that is what you expected. And so it's not solved really yet. And yes, it sounds expensive. It is expensive, but you have to do it somehow. You have to ensure the quality here and the security as a subdomain of quality. So I'm always looking for new articles around that topic because that's hasn't been solved too well yet. But I mean, there are some best practices, of course, especially when it comes to SaaS, right? We have a lot of users potentially, and it's external users. It's not an internal tooling that makes it even harder. But yeah, automated testing as much as you can. You can validate the input so that you can see that if someone is trying to do something with your features that was not intended. Like remember SQL injections in the 90s and 2000s, right? There might be AI injections, and of course restricting access to data on a very high detailed level, and of course transparency monitoring and keep the information, keep the inputs outputs somewhere so that you can audit later when things happen. So you can learn from it. But that's all I can say about this topic yet, because it's evolving, I'd say. Yes.
It's really interesting to see every once in a while a breach of some hosted chat agent by some company where you understand how you can make the bot kind of code, or how you can how you can expose like a full GPT-4 or something like that, right? That's interesting. Yeah, but I don't see it in many DDs right now, because like for us it's mostly later stage, and they're like, let's say the exposure to AI is kind of still limited. But yeah, observing in a curious state of mind.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what about AI for technical due diligence? Do you think it's going to change the traditional approach to it in any way?
Well, for technical due diligence, tech due diligence, it already does. I mean, we are using in different fields. We are already using AI. Yeah, it's not that we kind of feed everything into a big model and then get the answers. But I mean, it's a long and complex process, and in more and more places we use AI to just go deeper and more detailed. I mean, imagining, we have the static code analysis has been around for a long time, and it's pretty good, but it has its limitations. You cannot really it doesn't really read the code, right? It's using heuristics and like rather simple algorithms to evaluate if there are code smells or complexity and so on. But with LLMs, you can actually read the code and or let it read the code and let it give you information on, okay, how best practice is that? How maintainable is that? Is that a bug fix, or this commit, what happened here actually? Did that improve things? Was it fixing a bug? Was it adding a feature? So this expands the things we always wanted to do, or enables us to do the things we always wanted to do, but could never do because we only had 1 week or 2 weeks for a due diligence. So we kind of expand our workforce here, and we see it changing definitely our results as well, to be more reliable, to be even deeper. And I mean, with this pace, I think the sky's the limit, right? I think for a lot of rather straightforward DDs, there's a lot more that we can fetch here with AI. Not surprisingly, right? Commercial DD is on another page, Tobias.
Absolutely. Like, which of those work contracts is missing the IP addendum? Yeah, so I see it changing a lot. Okay, when it comes to commercial DD and especially numbers, then LLMs are not so helpful these days, right? It's still evolving because yeah, maths is not easy for a language model. But I see it as like a very helpful tool in DDs. Also just manually, just using an LLM to, yeah, for example, check contracts, search for anomalies to kind of check and scan contracts, or additional documents that you have, I find very helpful. And for code, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Well, and also not only code, but also interaction within the team. Let's say, maybe use sentiment analysis for pull request comments, for example. So we can actually see how or get an idea on the culture, how people are treating each other, and where maybe the pull requests are that we should read manually to get a better picture. But Tobias, you must get a lot of awful lot of data in the virtual data rooms sometimes, right? So wouldn't that be a prime example for making it searchable?
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. I
Ah,
mean, you can basically throw in whatever you have and just ask the model to at least briefly scan it. It's not always right, so the results are not always great, but they are like just good enough to point you onto topics that you wanna touch.
have you
Absolutely.
tried out
Yes.
with maybe that's a discussion for outside the session. But are there tools around yet that do that, or did you just
I don't know of
try out
any. I don't
yourself?
know of any.
Okay.
I don't know of any. I would just use like a base model and just throw it in. And
That would be a
with a
nice
ready-made tool.
nice SaaS product, right? To have a proper virtual data room at some point
Absolutely.
with those
Yeah.
features.
The solutions
Yeah.
out there are not so great.
Yeah, to all listeners here, this is what we could use. We can see product market fit here.
Absolutely.
That was a good try
All right.
to crack Tobias on a live podcast. Well,
Yeah.
all right. Well, there were a few questions that we really wanted to ask on the previous TechDD AMA, but we didn't have time for that. But I'm going to pop them up here. And one of them was, as a founder, how do you ensure, if you're not a technical person, especially if there is your CTO that's going to go through technical DD, how do you ensure that your tech is fine and that your CTO is doing a good job? Thomas?
Okay, that's excellent question and very broad topic. I think I touched it already a bit. I mean, in preparation for TechDD, it's rather simple to do it. Just run a TechDD on yourself, a private one, like a rehearsal, like a dry run. I know of some companies that did that actually twice, 2 times, 2 rotations before they actually started their process, exit process, and it was very helpful for them because they did have quite some skeletons. So we actually also already do that on a regular basis to just prepare a TechDD in a sense of previewing what the results would be, and secondly, actually coaching the CTO and the team for the basics, how to react to different kinds of auditors. Yeah, the styles are very different. And what documents to prepare. Everything starts usually at the architecture discussion, and this just has to be super perfectly designed so that you have a good start. But the bigger question that is even more important, I think, for all companies is how can a non-tech co-founder be sure that the CTO is still the right person at the stage of the company? As you know, for me, that changed. I obviously was a very good person for the beginning until we had like 80 developers. And there it was just good to get in more experience. But how to find that out? And of course, it's not easy, and it's a case by case thing and very individual. But what I always can recommend is to get involved or to stay involved, also in technology or tech things, like Tobias said, the tech debt, right? Technical debt is it's very hard to explain, but in the end, it's something you have to control. So also as a non-tech founder, make sure to attend some regular meetings and to involve actually, and not to sit there and do something else, but really try to get into that, because everyone will be very thankful and will actually appreciate it very much to that you take the time. And we'll make sure that you get the idea and understand what you need to understand. What could we mention here? So the demo days, for example, like every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, when the developers hopefully show what they have achieved during the past iteration. This is very important. So you can actually see what has been done. You get a feel for how fast things are and what the products are that are super slow and things that are faster. The roadmap planning. I mean, of course, you don't have to prioritize every single story, but when it comes to epics and very strategic stories, get involved and really understand what's being discussed here, and take the time to collaborate. This will be highly appreciated, and after doing that for a few months, you get a very good feel for what's going on here. It's not magic, right? It's of course, details will always be hidden, but there are so many things on the surface really that really help understanding things. And maybe last thing here is there's also a technical roadmap, right? As Tobias said, so how much do people invest into solving technical debt? That's what I call the technical roadmap, or technology roadmap. We have the feature roadmap where we allow people to do more things in the product and push the product forward. But on the other hand, we have to clean up tech debt. And this is also something non-tech founders should also be involved in, to really understand, okay, this tech debt, can it really wait? How much does it cost me? Because I mean, it's things you don't solve. The tech debt you build up cost kind of interest. Like all features you want to implement are more costly the more technical debt you have, and at some point you have to pay it back. And so I think really spending some time with the team and really showing that you're involved and you want to understand and want to contribute, also to very technical things, is, I think, a very, very good and very safe route to understanding what's going on. And that gives you a good feeling. And if you have the feeling, I don't think the CTO is doing so fine anymore. I mean, you only can get this feeling when you actually are involved. Otherwise, it's just either hearsay or your opinion. And then you get someone in, right? And the advisory board, for example, have a tech expert in the advisory board who can look at things without stirring up too much dust, or do a health check with your favorite TechDD provider. Or we're also working on a little self-assessment where non-tech managers can kind of get a benchmark. Are we doing all right, or are we below what the others have, and so on. But this is not released yet. But I think we can provide the link through Anna when it's ready.
Yeah, that would be great.
Now I talked a lot. Tobias.
Anything to add?
Well, one thing to mention, I mean, you covered quite a lot of it. One thing to mention from my perspective is kind of like looking at a company from the outside, to observe the interaction and the chemistry between CEO and CTO. You can see so much through that. Like, how do they like each other? How much do they interact? How often do they meet? If you have a meeting together with them, how do they interact? Do they trust each other or not? That's like always in TechDD, like an interesting thing to observe from my perspective. And yeah, the rest, I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. So just one more question left, and this is something I know Tobias is a big fan of: developer productivity and developer experience. So how do you look at that during the technical due diligence, and why are you doing this?
So developer productivity, let's start with that. very hard to measure, right? So, but what's actually really helpful is to look at to compare the same setting over time to see how did it change. Like we came up with a number called impact, which is based on some algorithms and heuristics on languages that kind of give a bit better idea on how much was contributed to the code in the commit than pure lines of code. And when you look at that number, in most cases you see it going down the per capita over time, because obviously the technical debt you can see there at work. And sometimes you can also see when when for example a lot of new people join the company, that it actually also goes down. That's an indicator for growth pain usually, right? When it sometimes abruptly by maybe adding another team, it slows down significantly. Then probably architecture or organization or processes are not were just not prepared to support more engineers, and then in the end you end up with a lot more salary payments, but a little more productivity overall, and it makes people unhappy as well. So this is the short answer for the doing a TechDD. We can rather only compare over time.
Perfect. Maybe
This number.
anything to add, Tobias, before we lose you?
Oh, well, I think I mean there's a difference between developer productivity and developer experience, and I like to also add the developer experience over time. Like many companies don't measure it, but Spotify Health Check, for example, is a very good model that you could introduce in an early stage to kind of measure over time how your team actually enjoys work. And whether there are like maybe hurdles that you can't discover through the code, or for looking at velocity or other metrics. Just
Exactly.
wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I've made very good experience with that over time, but you have to let it run over half a year or a year at least to reap the benefits.
It's just like a versioned retro, right? It's like a retro. Yeah.
That's really good, really good. And it was invented, I think, in 2013 or published by Spotify in 2013. It's still around, so that also says something. Like, must be effective. All right.
All right. I'll Google that later.
Cool.
So thanks for the tip. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I think it's already a lot clearer, everything about open source, AI, and everything else that we discussed. So yeah, have to do it again sometime. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Sure, anytime.
Bye.
All right. Take
Bye-bye.
care.